Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, and you know what time of the month it is? It's time for the monthly emulation news roundup. That is because we've had a metric crap ton of updates and even new emulators in the month of April, and somehow we're basically already in the month of May. Although if you live in Chicago, you wouldn't know it. One day it's going to be 85, the next day it's going to be 40, and basically threaten to snow. That being said, April's been a fun month for emulation and a terrible month for weather. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But starting off the top, something we just recently talked about, Super ZSNES is out from the makers of ZSNES from back in the day, and it's really fun to see a brand new from the ground up Super Nintendo emulator for 2026. And it has a ton of different graphical enhancements, and it seems like in the original video you guys are definitely on the fence as to whether you love them or don't like them whatsoever. But to clarify, that is just basically an enhancement engine. Developers and fan ROM hackers out there are going to be able to come in and do whatever they want with this in the future, and that's definitely going to be a very promising thing, because don't forget, it's basically just a toolbox for everyone to play around with. And having played around with this more in the background, played some more Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I was able to beat the game, at least the first loop, no issues. And because this is a game I have pretty good muscle memory for, so long as the emulator is doing its job, I should be able to perform exactly like I would on real hardware Mr. FPJ, and that's exactly what happened. So in my extra testing of something like Super ZSNES, I've just been having an absolute blast with it. And don't forget, maybe this wasn't clear on the initial video, if you don't like the enhancements, you can basically turn them off via toggle. You don't have to reload the game, so you can just treat this as a Super Nintendo emulator that could upscale some of the 2D graphics without putting any filtration over the top. But something like F-Zero here, absolutely stunning on Super ZSNES, and I can't wait to see what the developers do with this in the future. Because don't forget, this is just the initial release, it's basically an alpha, and they have a lot more features planned for it in the future. And again, more emulation options are always good, and I played around with F-Zero on my OLED TV, and it looks stunning, and with the high refresh rate of that television running in Super ZSNES, it was absolutely a smooth and polished experience, and honestly, this F-Zero looks so much better, at least to me, in the higher resolution than it does if you're actually playing just on a standard res kind of setup. But don't forget, there are more games that are going to be coming to this in the enhanced version, and only a few of them actually work right now, the ones they list when you actually install Super ZSNES. But if you haven't tried this one yet, the link is in the description down below, and I can't stress enough, it is really fun to have a new Super Nintendo emulator in the month of April. Now jumping ahead some generations, we have new updates to Technopair and Chihiro emulation, and I will have a specific video on this either you've already watched or I'll be running it soon. But you're going to get an update to Technopair shortly. This was a test sent to me from Reaver, one of the head developers of Technopair, and you're going to be able to play Ollie King for the first time via emulation. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, if you think about Air Tricks or Top Skater, both from Sega, this was basically the third game in the franchise, and it ran on Xbox hardware in the arcades with a double amount of RAM. And it's one of those things, you've never been able to really play this game before unless you found an original arcade cabinet, and now basically almost all the Chihiro games are going to emulate within Technopair themselves. Just be aware that it is still early emulation, so it's one of those things, the performance is not going to be 100% perfect. You'll see here kind of in the lead up to the actual gameplay, it looks like it's running full speed, and it can run full speed in some gameplay instances. When you actually jump into the gameplay in and of itself, you might notice that the frame rate goes up and down. That's definitely something that still needs work, and it's something that the Technopair team is apparently working on, so expect big things out of Chihiro emulation probably in the month of May. But I kind of want to show you guys this just as a little bit of a preview, because I always love to say on the channel, video game emulation is video game preservation, and because Ollie King is basically a near extinct arcade cabinet right now that did not get a home port, once those cabinets are off arcade floors, if it didn't emulate, this game would be absolutely lost to time and extinct, and you wouldn't be able to experience it. And honestly, now knowing that this game is playable, it's only going to get better. It is absolutely awesome. And if you want to know what it feels like to play it, it's kind of like one half Tony Hawk Pro Skater and one half Daytona USA, because it is a racing game at the same time that it is a skateboarding game. It's a ton of fun. It has a big Xbox vibe, and I can't wait for you guys to try this one out soon, because trust me, it is just so much fun. Now, I don't really quote-unquote declare winners when it comes to who had the best emulation improvements in the month of April, but in this month I'm actually going to declare an absolute lock winner here. RPCS3 had not one but two fundamental updates in the month of April that just absolutely blew the doors wide open for PlayStation 3 emulation. If you need an RPCS3 guide or RPCS3 tutorial, check my Emulation Night School playlist as well. But we got two fundamentally big improvements on the RPCS3 side of things in April, both of which you don't really actually interact with. It's just improvements that you'll never see, but you will absolutely feel them when you're playing. The first is the SPU code was basically refined to get a lot more performance out of every single piece of hardware out there. So if you're borderline getting close to running games at full speed, maybe you're going to be able to do that now. The second thing is it's automatically going to pull the wiki for the best settings for every single game and apply those so that you don't have to worry about going into the menu and toggling some exotic or esoteric settings to get your game to work. Something like Time Crisis 4 here, if you didn't change around one of the rendering modes, you would get a washed out image and graphical corruption. And it's one of those things, once you change that mode, the next time you launch a game that doesn't need it, you could have bugs or issues there, pun very much intended for the bugs on the screen. So now every single time you launch a game at RPCS3, it'll automatically configure all the best settings for that game and make sure you basically just get to sit down and play without thinking about what it is you need to set up. And that really is a nice thing because there's just been so many different improvements to RPCS3 in the month of April, and honestly it really feels like the RPCS3 team is trying to speedrun PlayStation 3 emulation in the year of 2026. So I can't wait to see what May brings because they've kept me definitely busy as far as update videos is concerned. But trust me, if you haven't played RPCS3 recently, you owe it to yourself to download it and start emulating some more PlayStation 3 games because the emulation just keeps getting better and better, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the year brings because so far the beginning half of it, absolutely on fire for PlayStation 3 emulation. Now moving over to what is basically an emulation package, and one that I want to talk about one more time. This is Super Mario 3D All Stars in the Super Deluxe version of the game. There was a deluxe version made by fans maybe last year or so that basically packaged every single best emulator up so you could play the same games on Super Mario 3D All Stars released for the Nintendo Switch. But developers have gone in and added new games to that, stuff like the PC ports of Super Mario 64, Mario Odyssey, as well as 3D World and Bowser's Fury, as well as Super Mario Sunshine or Eclipse, because there is a new version of that game, I say new maybe in the last 18 months or so, that expands upon what Sunshine is and basically doubles the game's length with a bunch of new levels. So now every single Mario game in 3D, including 64 on DS, will be available in this package. It'll all have the best settings applied. All you do is add your legally owned game to the folders, and then you can play any single 3D Mario game via emulation. And that absolutely makes a difference, especially with stuff like Sunshine, like Eclipse, and all the other 3D games. Emulation just ends up running them better than real Nintendo hardware, including stuff like Super Mario Odyssey. You can just get a higher frame rate and a better visual appearance, and stuff like Super Mario Sunshine or the Eclipse variant here, which does play in this release in Dolphin. You can just go up to 4K, widescreen, or 4:3 and do anything you want with all of the different visual options. And that's one of those things. Emulation keeps these games alive, and that is why retro gaming is making a comeback in my opinion. People can play a game and it looks like what their nostalgia tells them it looks like, not what it actually did back in the day. And when I say this thing is incredibly easy to set up, it's got comprehensive directions. If you just follow them, you'll have every single 3D Mario game ever made running on your PC via emulation and looking and performing better than they ever did on the native hardware. Because something like Odyssey here, an example I used in the previous video, it just looks stunning on my PC running in 4K, locked 60 frames per second, definitely better than a Switch can do, even better than a Switch 2 can do if it's running it faster. So definitely check this one out. I do not think in any way, shape, or form you will be disappointed. But let's jump back some generations and go to Nintendo's bitter rival in the 90s, Sega, with the Sega Saturn. That's because Amir or Ymir, I say it both ways so no one can say I said it wrong, got a fundamentally meaty update in April going to 0.30 status. And honestly, Amir is quickly becoming the de facto best emulator for Saturn in my opinion, because even if I own real hardware with an optical disc emulator, even if I have at this point in time way too many Mr. FPGAs, software emulation still has a place in my overall gaming, especially in my capture chain when I just need a minute or two worth of footage over a certain topic. And honestly, at this point in time, if you haven't tried Amir yet, I absolutely recommend it. Even if you're using something in RetroArch, the standalone just always does a better job in my opinion, and this version of Amir just goes to show how far Saturn emulation could be pushed. I do feel like in the future you're going to see something like GPU enhancements for Amir, kind of bring it in line to what DuckStation does for PlayStation 1. let's do the first and only soundtrack sample of this video just so I can take a slight break and you can listen to Nights into Dreams and get the song stuck in your head just like it's been stuck in my head all day long. We'll be right back with more news. Now that I made you listen to the soundtrack of Nights into Dreams, because it's my channel, I can absolutely do that. We're going to move over to Dolphin Emulation and the new fork Dolphin XR. And that is because there is a new VR version of Dolphin out there that you can kind of play around with and have a good time with. And it's just only a few months ago that stuff like Triforce Emulation even worked in Dolphin. If you're not familiar, Triforce is basically an arcade board based on the GameCube that Sega, Namco, as well as Nintendo released games on. And now there is a new VR build. And it's not like VR is new to Dolphin, but it was basically feeling like it was abandoned for some years now. So developers have gone in, forked it, and improved it where they could. And honestly, it is a fun time and totally a vibe. But just be aware, it is still in active development. There are some games that basically feel like you can play them start to finish in VR, and there's some games that definitely have issues, need a lot of patching to work correctly. But it's one of those things, virtual reality is always a year away from being big, but stuff like this definitely gives you a lot to play around with. And like everything else in this video, if I remember, and I always forget, I will leave links to everything in the description below. If I forget, just tell me in the comments and I'll sit down and do it. And trust me, it's not one of those things that I do intentionally. Voice over me versus upload me. I might make this thing 48 hours in advance and then sit down and upload it when I need it. So what I promise in the video, I completely forget about by the time I actually go to the upload stage. But trust me, give this one a shot. Just don't expect perfection. You can't be disappointed whatsoever. And the nice thing is you don't need to have the most powerful PC on the market, but you'll have to have a decent enough spec if you're actually going to send that headset data out, because that could be more intense at this point in time than even running the emulation. And this is something I would love to see the developers work on it more, because I want to live in a world where you have perfect 60 frames per second Super Mario Sunshine, then brought up to a higher frame rate for a virtual reality headset where all of the graphics work, so you can just kind of hang out in the world of Isle Delfino in full virtual reality, because I love the bright poppy colors of Sunshine. It is my personal favorite 3D Mario game, even if it isn't most people's, and it's one of those things I just want to live in the world of this and hang out in VR. And speaking of VR, we got news that there's also a virtual reality version of PlayStation 1 emulation in development by VRified Games. There really isn't a build yet, but it does go to show that people are definitely taking a look at VR in 2026 and trying to make a little bit more out of it. And that really is the thing. VR gaming has some definite must-plays out there, but there's so much more those VR headsets could do when you wait for a new game to release. Stuff like PlayStation 1 in VR, stuff like Dolphin in VR, it's absolutely just a vibe, and it's one I personally enjoy. You can leave me a comment down below and you tell me, VR gaming, yes or no for you personally, and if you do own a headset, which one is it? But this is definitely something fun. I would be 100% behind PlayStation 1 in virtual reality. It would be a crazy vibe to go into all of these highly pixelated, low polygon 3D worlds and just take a look around a completely different perspective. That is something I would love to do for sure. But I would definitely say if there is one winner this month, it's got to be RPCS3. The dev team there is just absolutely cooking with fire when it comes to new improvements, new performance gains, and basically ease of use. And that really is the thing. You don't just want an emulator that's improving under the engine, you want an emulator that's also improving in the overall end user usability scale. Because I know how to make these things work, you probably do too, but if somebody out there just wants to casually emulate PlayStation 3, going through all of the deep settings to try to make it work exactly the way you want it to can be a little bit of a pain. So getting a higher frame rate, because there's efficiencies in the SPU combined together with the fact that now the thing basically sets itself up, it's becoming better performant, it's becoming better for the end user, and that's just a straight up win from start to finish. But that is the emulation news for the month of April. Hopefully May is as good, if not even bigger. And it's one of those things, we still have basically 8 months left in the year. I think you're going to see a lot more movement in emulation. And that means we all win, because emulation is incredible and I always support it. But short of that, we're done. Hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.